From crazy car races to geometric shapes, stay tuned to number 1 to find out which game is considered the most successful franchise of all time. Number 10. Pac-Man. This video game is one of the biggest phenomenon of pop culture. The premise is fairly simple, but it quickly caught on and captured the attention of the whole world. Originally, the game was released in Japan in the spring of 1980, and by October of that year, the game was licensed for the United States, after which it became a global hit. Nobody, not even the creators, could have predicted the success Pac-Man would have. In those days, the most popular games were the so-called space shooters, but this was a whole new concept. The player was in control of Pac-Man, who was trying to escape a maze with 4 ghosts who are obviously enemies of Pac-Man. There are points to be collected along the way by eating dots, but it's also very simple, come to think of it. Maybe it's this simplicity of gameplay that elevated Pac-Man from just one more arcade game of its day to turning it into an icon of the video game world. Number 9. Tetris. Again, this is one of those games which changed an entire generation. We can honestly say that Tetris came out of left field and became a household name overnight. This video game was developed by a Russian programmer, Alexei Pajitnov, and was the first game to be exported from the Soviet Union to the United States. And as soon as it came to America, it skyrocketed. Its initial success came through arcade platforms, but when it was introduced to the Game Boy console, its legacy was cemented. Tetris became so popular that it was eventually voted the second greatest video game of all time, which is an amazing success story if you think about how it was originally created. There wasn't a team of people working on it. There was no 5-year plan for its development. It came out of one man's mind. And let's not even talk about the gameplay, organizing geometric pieces so that they fit perfectly and add up to each other. Quite a concept. But precisely because of this, Tetris has become what it is. Sometimes, less is more, and this video game proves it. Big time. Number 8. Sonic the Hedgehog. After the initial success of arcade games and simple PC concepts, it was time for the video game industry to change completely. And it did. Rapidly. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, new consoles started entering the video game market. One of them, of course, being Sega. Sega was one of the biggest arcade game developers, but the company saw fit to enter the console market and draw in more customers. They needed a hit, and Sonic the Hedgehog was it. Sonic became so huge that it spawned several sequels, turning it into one of the biggest franchises Sega ever had. The premise is fairly simple, but it struck a chord with the players because it harkened back to old mythological concepts, engaging the players as active participants of the quest. Sonic is faced with a series of problems and he, along with some of his friends, has to stop his archenemy, Eggman, from dominating the world. Sonic became so huge that in addition to video games, it became a comic book series, a cartoon, and more. Number 7. The Sims. Video games have been so appealing because they enable us to escape reality and imagine we're in other faraway worlds. But after decades of those escapist games, there came a time for a new concept. The idea was not to escape our everyday life, but to rearrange it so that it suits our desires. It was a life simulation, and The Sims became such a big hit precisely because of this concept. The Sims is one of the best-selling franchises of all time, selling around 200 million copies worldwide. But what's even more amazing is that The Sims is not a so-called goal-driven game, because there is no actual goal. The game belongs in the sandbox genre, where the only purpose is to direct the players and satisfy their needs. As a player, you create virtual people, put them in houses, and direct them around. And that's pretty much it. There is an option of constructing a house or using an already built one, and nobody could have dreamed that this fairly simple concept could turn into something so big. Number 6. Call of Duty. This would not be a complete list of the best video games if we didn't mention first-person shooters. This genre is probably among the most popular, and Call of Duty is definitely up there with the greatest. This game started out as a Microsoft Windows application, but afterwards it was expanded to consoles. There have also been a couple of spin-offs based on the original gameplay. The player is in control of an infantry soldier who fights in World War II battlefields, with a series of objectives to be accomplished. Pretty simple, nothing fancy, but highly effective. The atmosphere of an actual battlefield, along with the superb audio effects and the ability to experience a battlefield firsthand, really helped the Call of Duty elevate to something more than just another video game. As of 2016, the entire Call of Duty franchise has sold more than 250 million copies, making it one of the most successful video game franchises of all time. Number 5. Final Fantasy. This entry on our list belongs to the science fiction genre, as well as RPG, or role-playing games. There is an interesting story behind its creation. It was developed by Hironobu Sakaguchi in 1987, and it came to be as his last effort in the film of video games. Surprisingly enough, the game turned out to be very successful. So much so that it went on to spawn several sequels and earn a ton of money. It is definitely one of those games that redefined the entire genre, in this case, sci-fi. The majority of Final Fantasy sequels are set up as separate storylines, and they don't have anything to do with each other, but there are some similar or even identical elements. Final Fantasy is so popular that it has its own fan base, numbering in the millions. Each plotline is so well developed that the players start caring for all of the characters on a very deep level, creating a firm bond that helps them delve inside the game's unique universe. Number 4. Grand Theft Auto. The success of a video game sometimes depends on a mixture of genres, such is the case with Grand Theft Auto. On the surface, the concept is fairly simple, but there's more to it than that. Grand Theft Auto combines elements of action-adventure, role-playing, racing, and more. The result is nothing short of amazing. The video game audience loved it, and the game is certified legendary. As a player, you are supposed to choose a mission and lead characters. But what's more interesting is that there are many side plots that engage you even more than the backstory. What added to the authenticity of Grand Theft Auto is the voicing of the characters, done by such veteran actors as Dennis Hopper, James Woods, Ray Liotta, and Peter Fonda. This is one of the most successful video game franchises of all time, with over 150 million copies sold around the world. Number 3. CounterStrike. It's impossible to talk about the first-person shooter video games without mentioning CounterStrike. This game still stands as a watershed, not just in the first-person shooter genre, but in the video game industry as a whole. What makes this game highly popular and successful is the fact that it's a multiplayer game. You have two opposing teams, terrorists and counter-terrorists, each having their own set of objectives to accomplish. This ability to play the game with other people as your team members or adversaries, that's precisely what turned CounterStrike into a massive success. The game also spawned several sequels and spin-offs, but the original issue was probably the best, for the simple fact that it was so new and groundbreaking. Of course, we could also talk about the negative aspects of the game, because there were some who criticized the violence and the bloodshed, but overall, no one can deny the impact CounterStrike had on the whole gaming community. Number 2. Minecraft. This is another one of those sandbox video games that went on to become legend in and of themselves. And if you come to think of it, it's even hard to understand why Minecraft became an enormous hit. The rules of its gameplay are virtually non-existent. What strikes you from the start is the fact there's no goal that the player is supposed to accomplish. You can do literally whatever you want, and that's about it. Well, maybe it's precisely because of this freedom in gameplay that Minecraft hit big. And of course, there's creativity. You are allowed to build and create new shapes. You're expected to do that. Being creative, plus having no boundaries or imposed rules, that was the magic formula for the success of Minecraft. Now, just because Minecraft is simple doesn't mean that it's boring. There is a lot going on, and the player could never be bored. It's simply not possible. Otherwise, the game would have been finished a long time ago. Minecraft has been the critics' favorite for years now, mainly because of the freedom it allows for its players as well as the engaging simplicity of gameplay. Before we get to number 1, take a moment to hit the like button below, and don't forget to subscribe. Number 1. Super Mario Bros. And here it is, probably the greatest video game of all time. Why is Super Mario Bros. Such an iconic video game? Well, it's a combination of things. The game is fun to play, engaging, dynamic, and last but not least, it has an unforgettable musical score. Yes, we all remember the iconic themes of Super Mario Bros. The music was so good that it's almost impossible to imagine the game without the music playing in the background. In the mid-1980s, the video game market wasn't in the best shape. People needed a hit, and they got it. Super Mario Bros. Came out at just the right time, right after the market crash in the video game industry, and afterwards, nothing was the same. The game became familiar even to those people who were not gamers per se, because it went beyond the borders of the gaming industry. It spawned several sequels and spin-offs, including a 1993 feature film. The legacy of Super Mario Bros. Is that it's more than a fabulous video game, it's a global phenomenon. What is your favorite video game? Tell us in the comments below and take care.